Hey guys, Benny Bam coming at you strong here. Talk a little bit of Angels late night. Sorry, early morning where I am right now. Not the best camera quality, but we're doing what we can. Um, I just wanted to get on and talk a little bit about the Angels coming up for 2024. Obviously, a lot of issues going on. Losing Shohei Ohtani was a big one. I've had people for the last 2 years, before Ohtani even left, asking me what I thought was going to happen. And of course, you're always hopeful that the Angels would have, resigned him and re-upped on that and done everything they could. And I think they had conversations about doing that, but I don't think when it came to deferring the type of money that the Dodgers were willing to do, they have a lot bigger backers. Artie Moreno sitting there going, man, do I really personally want to do that? As opposed to the Dodgers ownership, which is a bunch of different financial people that can really make decisions that can support that. And I think that ultimately, yeah, that's probably what it came down to. I don't think Artie was willing to go where it needed to go in order to keep Shohei. And not only that, but then even if you keep Shohei, how are you going to build a team around him? Because as we saw over the last couple of years, if Mike Trout goes down for any amount of time and you don't have him and Shohei together, then you're not going to be able to compete in the AL West because the Oakland A's will scratch a team together every year. They're doing it right now with JD Davis and some of these other guys they've picked up for literally nothing. Um, obviously the Astros are perennial contenders and still have the same core there with some young guys around them that could go on even for a while longer. I think they just re-upped Altuve as well. Losing guys like Springer has not seemed to really, put much of a cog in the wheel because they have other guys that they've developed that are ready to step up in the same way that the Angels don't have those guys they've developed that are ready to step up to replace guys like Shohei Ohtani. Of course, not a whole lot of people in the world, pitcher or hitter, could replace Shohei Ohtani, even if they were one of the best prospects ever, and they would have to be to even come close in either one of those regards. But the Angels just don't even have, the baseline major league guys, which is why guys like Joe Adell keep getting chances every single year because, they're just hoping that, eventually it's going to pay off to keep giving them the chances in the same way that it has for certain other guys they've had in the past. And they keep going back kind of to the well on that kind of stuff where, if we keep going to them enough, maybe we can get a little bit more out of it, squeeze a little bit harder, get a different approach with Ron Washington in there. Ron is going to be a guy that is old school, but does not completely dismiss the new age stuff. He's going to be a blend of those two things. He's going to be somebody who's going to give them a lot of energy and hold them accountable and kind of teach them new and better ways to do things, but keep them focused on the task at hand, which honestly was probably a lot of the problem with the last couple of managers that they've had. Even the last few years of Sosha, going into, the short Joe Madden tenure and then, the Phil Nevin thing and all the different things that have happened. Obviously, you had a Brad Ausmus in there for a minute and all that kind of stuff too. But, Ron is a baseball guy who's focused on baseball stuff. And it's not to say that the other managers aren't that. It's just that he's more of a grit and grind baseball guy. And some of them are bigger picture guys, like Joe Madden is very big picture, very, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that. Ron is kind of more stayed to the true values of this is what works in baseball, and that's what we're going to do, kind of thing. And so I think that is good for the Angels. I think they do need that. I think Mike Trout, if you see him in the interviews that he's been able to do, in spring so far and everything, that he seems like he's liking the vibe because now it goes right back on Mike's shoulders, just like before Shohei got here and, in the waning years of Pujols and all that, where now he's got, Mike's looking around and going, wow, I don't have Fletch. I don't have Calhoun. I don't have any of those guys here anymore. The kind of grit grinders around me. There are some grit and grindy guys on the team, certainly Regifo and some of those guys are still doing that, but Drury was a good pickup last year that they kept. I was a little sad not to see them even really try to do much to get guys that went to other places for really nothing, and Moustakas and especially Urshela, even though he was hurt part of last year. But those guys were nice depth pieces on the infield. And looking back on it, I don't officially in an official capacity work for the team, the Angels, right? Last year, I did do some commentating on AM 830 with Dining with Dills. Shout out to Peter Dills. Amazing show, guys. Check it out anytime you can. Dining with Dills is amazing. Elmer Dills and now Peter Dills and how they blend baseball and amazing things together. And I was able to go and sit in on those shows for the most part last year, a lot of them, and really absorb a lot of the knowledge that was there. I got to see Trent a little bit when I was there and It was after a really bad game though, and I don't think it's kind of hard because when you have Trent Rush's job, you're getting a lot of fans that aren't real happy and that are disappointed after a lot of disappointing times. And last year was, of course, even more so because everybody knew because of the lack of success and them not trading Otani and all these things that it was not going in a good direction, right? And you could just sense that even when we were there doing radio shows last year, it was just kind of like, ooh, and it's hard to hide that, because he's a human being. He knows that, and he did a great job though. You never saw it on air or anything, but I mean, certainly there were moments I saw him come out. He was like, "It's been rough, man. It's been rough," and it's true. It had been rough, and it's not Trent saying that. It's just the reality of the situation was rough. To have a guy like Shohei Otani, I understand Artie's perspective. I don't want to be the guy that traded Shohei Otani. He might end up being the best player of all time, and if I traded him, it doesn't do anything good for me because the only thing Artie really has going for him now is that guys like Mike Trout, as much as you may not think that it's worth Mike Trout's time to stick around, the reason why he sticks around is because of what the Angels offer, and that's loyalty. And that's something that, the Lakers try to do that in LA. And that's something that, you can argue whether or not it's a successful strategy. Obviously, since Artie's on the team since 2003, he hasn't had a whole lot of success to speak of outside of a few divisional runs. And in 2015, they were probably one Garrett Richards injury away from maybe making a run. That was Weave's last really good year. They had a couple really good pitchers still at the top of the rotation, and that was their shot, and they missed it. And, and then they got swept by the Royals. And then Garrett got hurt, and, Pujols really went south after that. And Mike started not getting as lucky with his injuries a couple years later, and it just kind of all, became what it is, which is a grind. Baseball's 162 games, and then that's not even, they haven't even started that part yet. They're just in spring right now, and then they have another 162 games to play after that, right? So it's very frustrating, being somebody who's followed the Angels so closely my whole life. I mean, I made Angels Baseball Addicts. I've done everything I possibly can to get anywhere near and close to the team. Including writing for, HaloHangout.com and LegendsOnDeck.com, and then doing the AM 830 stuff, which was a privilege of my life, really, last year. And I would love to do something like that, even more so in the future. But it's been frustrating. This is one of the more frustrating times I can remember, because to lose Shohei for nothing, compensatory pick or whatever, that doesn't really, show me that you know how to draft, and then maybe that pick would mean something. I mean, it's just a frustrating thing where, they have had some good draft picks. I like Reed Detmers a lot. I think he's going to be really good for a long time. Obviously, Shanuel's been a revelation that's been ready almost right off the jump when they drafted him at first base. You can play some other infield a little bit, but, he looks like he's going to be a good hitter. He's not going to be an Otani hitter, and if you're looking for a replacement for Otani, that's not going to happen. Artie Moreno recently came out and said that they're not looking to spend money just to show that they're going to spend money. And that's an interesting thing to say, because if you were ever going to spend money, right, it should have been to keep Shohei Ohtani. Like, when are you ever going to get a better player than that that's worth the money, right? I understand he's had a couple arm injuries, right? But even just as a hitter, I mean, he's a great hitter. He's one of the best hitters in baseball, if not the best, right? So, when you combine everything from home runs to doubles to everything, and Otani is as dialed in as ever at the plate. I mean, you could say whatever you want about, his arm and, and all of that, but in the age of medical, medical advancement now, they're getting through Tommy Johns and being able to get these guys back on the field pretty quick. And Otani has said, I know he said to the Dodgers, that's what's going to happen. I'm going to come back and I'm going to pitch. And of course they're saying, yeah, whatever, whatever gets you on the roster, dude. And they've got a lot of former Angels people that work for the Dodgers. Jose Mota's over there now, doing similar to what he did with the Angels. And, a lot of those guys are originally from the Dodgers as well, that even our announcers, a lot of them, like Gooby and all those guys have come from the Dodgers at one point or another, other teams. So, we all respect that and everything, but it is frustrating to not get anything for him, because now you look at the team and you're like, wow. And then you didn't re-sign any of the guys that you could have after waiving a bunch of dudes that you traded really good prospects for. The catching prospect that we gave up to get Giolito, who did literally nothing for us when every single scout that you talked to before those trades said a team could overpay for him, but if not, the Indians are just going to have to keep him because he's not a big game pitcher. He's very hittable. His pitches are hittable, and the reason why it doesn't seem that way is because he's pitching in a division where none of the teams are very good. And so he's been able to look like he's amazing against these teams that, nobody's really competitive for the division outside of a couple clubs, and a lot of them are around 500 or below in the division that he was in, the AL Central. And, that's why his numbers look so good. And, Artie took a swing and said, hey, we're going to make this happen. We're going to get all these people. And then when it didn't go well a few weeks later, he waived them all. And it was to save money. It was to get underneath the luxury threshold. And you still gave up the prospects, right? You still gave up the people that you gave up to get the people that you got. So you basically emptied the farm for a chance at something when you knew your best player was pretty much going to be on the shelf. Or one of them. You could argue whether or not Mike Trout or Shohei Ohtani is better, but the guy that had been your stead hold, for the last decade, Mike Trout was on the shelf, right? Whatever. And Shohei blows his arm out, but he's still willing to hit, and he can do that. He's done it before. Doesn't really do any structural damage, and he wears a guard on the arm. So they allowed that to happen, but they just could not win games when they needed to. And it was because of the exact same thing as a lot of the guys they got. Moustakas was good. He's been in pressure situations before, but a lot of those other guys, they just didn't do anything. And, they were trying to get acclimated, and they couldn't get acclimated fast enough. Plus, there's something to be said for the fact that you have Nevin, who's a guy that doesn't have a contract beyond the year, right? So everybody kind of knew like, oh, this is it. And we're already not really in a position that's good. And you're assuming that making all these moves, we're just going to randomly be able to get into that position. Like, no, like if you're already in a good position and then you supplement your roster, that makes more sense and you can justify the prospects. What the Angels did was really was not good team management. You could tell it was more of a personal decision. Oh, okay, let's do this, let's do that. But it really was not good team management because they weren't in a good enough position to really give up the prospects to get those guys in the first place. Then you're basically saying we're gonna go for everything now while we have Ohtani. Mike Trout's not really playing. Ohtani's really only playing one way shortly thereafter. So even if you go for it, you weren't in a position to make it before you went for it. So if you'd been in a position where you were leading the division or really, really close, it would make sense to make that push, especially if you knew that Ohtani wasn't going to be back. But honestly, if you knew that you weren't going to re-sign him because of the financial implications, you should have traded him because you could have gotten at least 3 or 4 decent prospects back for him that would have really helped you into the future. And now the Angels are looking at kind of a barren immediate future where, yes, they can still draft some guys. And yes, they're obviously going to try to expedite them as quickly as they can in the major leagues. And sometimes that's going to work and sometimes it's not. Most of the time it's probably not going to work. That's just not the way that it really works. There are levels to this. And when you come out of college, there's a reason why there's single A and double A and, triple A. And there used to be even more than that. And sometimes there's multiple high A and low A, and there's all kinds of different leagues. And that's because these guys are not on the level immediately outside of a few very special players that you're going to find that come out of college that are just that gifted. And the Angels don't have those guys in their system right now. They just don't. There's 1 or 2 guys you can look at and go, oh, yeah, might be good. Might be good. Maybe, maybe this year, possible. They bring them up, see what happens. But, for the most part, it's been really, really, they tried some stuff and it didn't work. And then a lot of things compounded on top of other things. And so all of that to lead into 2024 and where we currently sit, right? Not to bash anybody or the Angels and how they do things. I like Perry, Artie, from what I understand, is a nice man. I mean, I was glad that he let me on his property to be a part of the 8:30 shows that I was part of. So I'm definitely not mad at him, but it's frustrating as a fan to watch all of those things that we just talked about. So going into this year, what needs to happen for the Angels to be competitive, right? Um, you know, you would need some pitchers to take step forwards. Griffin Canning needs to stay healthy and take a step forward. Reed Detmers needs to continue to take a step forward. Patrick Sandoval probably needs to continue to take a step forward. I mean, he's not bad or anything, but he needs to, they need somebody to step up and be a bona fide number one or two, and then they need to go off that. Now, there's rumors out there that they're still in on guys like Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery, and depending on what you believe about all of that, and JD Martinez, and maybe they're in on some of these, and people talk about, oh, well, if they got Snell and Martinez, that would pretty much replace Ohtani, right? Well, where were we with Ohtani, right? And that's why they're not spending the money right now. And it's because even if you got both of those guys, are you leading the division? No. Not unless a lot happens to the Astros, and even though there's more wild card spots than ever, what does that even mean? Because there's other really good teams. I mean, the NL East is full of teams that are competing right now, from the Orioles to the Blue Jays. Red Sox have kind of taken a step back, but the Yankees have not. They are all right there, trying really hard, and those teams are going to get some wild card spots. The AL Central, maybe they'll be good, maybe they won't. The Twins made some moves this offseason that look good on paper, so we'll see. They do that a lot, though, where they make good moves that look good on paper and take a lot of the Dodgers' leftovers. They needed to re-sign Kiki Hernandez, so they just ship somebody over to the Twins. That's always how it goes. The Twins are like, we will gladly take Dodger discards, no problem, because they're still usually productive in our division. So, which is understandable. I mean, you can't blame the guys for doing it. So, and a lot of times it works out good for the Twins, where they're competitive, even though they're in more of a mid-market to a small market. So it's different. You think differently when you're in that market, and you have different resources available to you. And if you can take some off the scrap heap and get production, then you're good. And not to say that they're always like scrap heap, like guys that are done, but they're just guys that the Dodgers no longer, can have on their roster for whatever reason, because there's only so many spots available, and they have other more talented guys than them, which is a really good problem to have. And the reason that happens isn't just because of free agency, although the Dodgers do good in free agency. It's because they supplement through free agency with guys that they draft and develop. And that's what the Angels just are not really doing well enough. Like, you can point to individual spots and go, oh, they did it good there and they did it good there. But overall, the consistency of it's just not there like it is with the Dodgers and the Yankees and other teams like that. So, long story basically to say, now we're going into 2024. You need all those pitchers to step forward. You need, we still have closer. We still have Estevez. He fell apart at the end of last year, though, because they were overusing him, and they were trying really hard to, make a push last year, and they probably exhausted him a little bit too much. And then you could see it in the results toward the end of the year, where he was gassed and his arm was pretty much flat. At the end of the year, he was pitching balls that, were going down the middle and that were completely flat. And when you do that to major league hitters, you're only going to get away with it maybe once, maybe twice if you're lucky, and that's it. So, and you'd have to get real lucky to get away with it twice. So once, maybe you might surprise them where they're like, oh, that's a change. Oh, nope, that's just a flat fastball. Okay. But, if they're a really good hitter, you probably won't get away with it once. If they're not even a good hitter, you probably still won't get away with it, because these guys are in the major leagues for a reason, right? They can hit that. That's what they're looking for. They want that pitch, and especially when it's not located right. So Estevez is there, and if he can just recapture his form from last year and they can use him a little bit better, which I think Ron will. Ron's a smart manager. He's going to use people in good situations. I've already heard him talking a little bit about not wanting Shanuel to lead off. He likes a little bit more speed in his lead off, and he was actually talking about the slots in the lineup and like the productivity level and why he wants certain types of players in each position, which I like. It shows that there's a lot of thought process going into that, and they're good things that the Angels are going to be able to take advantage of to be able to compete. And they're going to have to use every edge they can like that to try to compete. If it's a certain slot in the lineup and some guy's killing it there, okay, cool. If he's not, then we're going to have to move some stuff around and figure it out. So Mike Trout's going to have to be healthy. That's just the bottom line. He's the best player on the team by far and away now. It's not even close. Ohtani was the only guy really even close to him before that. And, Anthony Rendon, I have no idea what to expect from Rendon. And maybe those low expectations are a good thing because maybe he's one of these guys that when you're the underdog, like when he was in Washington and they ended up winning the World Series and nobody really, I mean, you knew they were a good team, but nobody really knew that they were going to come up and win a World Series that year. Maybe that underdog mentality, some guys like that. And maybe Rendon, having almost no expectations now other than the fact that he's collecting checks at the post box, being that expectation. But other than that, he may be able to, maybe with no expectations on him, stay a little bit more healthy and actually get in the lineup and, produce. If he can just be back to somewhere close to where he was a couple years ago, just as being a consistent, healthy hitter, the guy can hit. And if he can hit and just protect Mike Trout, that's all they really need him to do. Because if Trout's healthy, he's going to hit. And Trout's feeling good. He's looking good. You can tell he's got kind of that swing back in his step. And he said, he does intend on proving that he's still the best player in baseball. And he said all that takes is just health. That's what he said. Those are his words in spring training during an interview. I forget whose interview it was, but he said it. You can look it up online right now. So all those things need to go well. They're going to have to get production from other places. Guys like Rengifo are going to have to stay healthy. They're going to need a lot of health because there's no depth. They don't have a whole lot of depth. They brought in some guys like Sano and Dozier and, hope that they get lucky. I mean, Sano's got power for sure. Dozier's not a bad player. I've always liked him, when he was on the Royals, and he's not bad or anything. But, these guys aren't the difference makers that are going to be contendership. They're guys that are around the edges. Maybe you'll get lucky and they get on the team. If you got an amazing return on a guy like Sano, he might hit 10, 15 home runs for you. You know what I mean? Like if he did any more than that, that'd be great. But is that going to be the difference between Angels making the playoffs and not? Probably not. He'd have to really do something special for that to happen and completely exceed expectations and hit 50 home runs, or, there'd have to be something crazy that would happen. Hopefully the Angels can get it to a point where, they did spend some money on the bullpen with Stevenson and bringing back some guys like Soriano and guys that when used in the right positions, which I think Ron Washington will take a look at when they've been successful in their careers and going, okay, and not put them in bad situations, which it's not always that we don't have good bullpen arms. A lot of times it's that we're not using them in the right situations. That's what the Angels' problem has been for ever since, even the last couple of years of Socia, you could argue that ever since, they really have not, since about 2016, 17, they really have, there have been times where they use guys correctly. And then there's times where they start bringing guys in at weird times in the game. And you're like, well, wait a minute. So if you're a relief pitcher and you're used to coming in the 7th inning every game, and then they bring you in the 9th inning to close because Estevez is tired, right? Like there's a different mentality to that. And it's not as easy as just, oh, you're a professional, right? Like there's a real human emotion that comes over you when you're in different situations. So I think that's part of the problem is just situational awareness. Like, so the guys all need to know their roles coming in. And I think this is what Ron Washington's already doing is he's going, hey, like you're going to be the closer. You're the setup guy. When he's tired, you're going to be the closer. And this guy's going to be the setup guy. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be more defined roles, which is going to help everybody so they understand where they're at. Now, is there going to be a time outside of that where some guy gets hurt and somebody else has to go in and do that job? Yes, of course there's going to be, but you want to prepare those guys so that they're ready for those opportunities as they come. And as long as you're transparent, honest about roles and what to expect and what not to expect, then I think, the sky's the limit for what they're capable of. I don't dislike the arms we have in the bullpen. A little coffee tonight, or this morning, I should say, getting my day going here. But the bullpen, will be a product of the starters. The starters, look, I know we're in the modern world of like, oh, let's start a reliever at the beginning of the game and all that. And, whatever, that can work if you're lucky and kind of work reverse pitching techniques for the game as far as the philosophy goes of how you're going to work it, maybe work it back front to back instead of back to front or whatever the case may be with your pitching staff. But what the Angels need is they need their pitchers to be workhorses, and they need these guys to go 6 innings. It's just reality. If they can go 7, awesome. They can't go 4. And that was happening a lot last year, where you would get a starter, like a guy like even Giolito when he came over, but that's a bad example. But even guys like Sandoval that we've had around and Canning and Detmers, if you go out there and you give up 10 runs in the first 4 innings, number one, you're probably going to lose that game. no matter what you do on offense. Probably not going to happen. There's not a whole lot of starting pitchers in the AL West that you're going to score 10 runs off of the same game that you're giving up 10 runs on. And if you are, it's not going to be a high leverage situation because it's going to be somebody like Oakland in a game that doesn't matter, that's pitching somebody that they don't care about because they know that that game doesn't matter. You know, they can't do that. And the more times that I mean, it'll happen, you know, once or twice here and there, but like when you're consistently like last year, it was like once a week, one of the main like 3 starters on the team would go out there and not get past the 4th inning. And you're just sitting here going, you can't keep doing that. You know, your bullpen can't take that. And I like the depth they're building in the bullpen, but the bullpen is a product of the starters. How you use them, what's required of them, you know, the wear and tear and all that, you know, your starters have to be able to do their job. And I'm not saying they're going to go out there and give you 6 shutout innings every day, but if they can battle and get through 6 and give up, you know, 3 runs and or less, that would be most of the time. Not all the time. There's going to be times they give up more than that, and you might even win a couple of those games. But you know, you can't give up 10 runs and be out by the 4th inning. Like, not only that, not only is your team not going to win that game, but now you're using up all your pitching to get out of that game. And you're almost better off just leaving that starter in to just get shelled, but then it kills him, his confidence, and everything else that's going on, right? So there's so many ebbs and flows and teeter-totters of baseball, which is what makes it so beautiful, but it's also what makes it so treacherous because you have to be able to control those things. And the Angels are going to have to control all of those type of factors this year. They're going to have all the little things, the hustle, the throwing guys out, the defense. They have to have impeccable defense this year because they cannot afford to give up any more runs than they can because who's going to score? You think Joe Adell's going to go out there and randomly hit 40 home runs this year? I wish it could happen, but he can't hit off-speed pitches. It's just a fact. I wish he could hit off-speed pitches. I wouldn't be talking about it if he could. He just can't do it. I don't know what it is, and hopefully he gets better at it. Can you improve at it? Sure, but it is the major leagues, and it's pretty hard. When he knows, you know, when he has an idea of the pitch that's coming, and it's something that's, you know, he can handle. Yeah, the guy can get on top of it. He can shoot it over the fence. Doesn't happen a whole lot in the major leagues because they know what what pitches you're good against and locations, and they're not going to throw it there. It's just a fact, you know. It's just the way that it is. So we can all debate about what he can and can't do. He hadn't really done it till now. I mean, in the minors, every time they send him to the minors, it looks great and you have hope. And then he comes back up to the majors and he might flash a little bit, but from his outfield defense and the way he plays and reads balls sometimes, and you know, his glove work sometimes where the ball, you know, hits him in the hand and it pops out or it pops over the fence or whatever. I mean, he's got to get a handle on that stuff. And you know, if I was Joe Adell, I'd be like, I have the perfect solution for this problem. I am going to shadow Mike Trout in everything he does because he is still, no matter what you think of him as an elite player, if you think he fell off because he's been hurt a couple times, whatever, but he's still one of the all-time great players in the history of baseball. And if I was any player in the Angels, I would be going to him and picking his brain about everything that he does. I'd be like, how do you prepare? How do you read balls in the outfield? How do you take your fly balls? You know, what extra time do you put in and when do you put it in? Is it before the game? Is it after the game? Is it the day before? You know, what are you doing? Are you hitting balls off the tee? You know, they know some of this stuff because they're around him every day, but there might be more. And you know what? I would be a sponge trying to drain all the information I can out of Mike Trout if I was any of those guys, because that's what's going to help you improve is being that. And that's the same thing that he was to Pujols when he came up, and Pujols got there and he's like, I'm going to soak up everything I can from this guy because he's a legend and I want to be in the same era as guys like him. And he is, you know, multiple MVPs. He doesn't have the World Series rings that Pujols has, but he's, you know, he's right up there with Pujols all time. You know, as far as being a, you know, righty hitter that is just, you know, one of the all-time greats all around. You know, and Mike Trout's story is not done. So don't think because he's, you know, was it 32, just turned 32, I think. Don't think just because he's 32 or 31 or whatever it is now that, you know, his story's done. If he can stay healthy, his story's not done. And does that mean that the Angels are going to win? I don't know. I mean, this year, when you look at the roster going into spring, it doesn't look that way, but things can happen. If you get a couple guys that hit that you're not expecting, If Shanuel ends up turning into an all-star or something, and then Reed Detmers ends up being the number one guy and starts pitching like that consistently, a lot of things can happen. And then that's where you can supplement your roster and maybe get deeper into playoffs. But they're still at the discovery phase of that, where they've got to hope some of these guys pop. And if they don't pop and they continue basically the same trajectory they're on, where they're just okay players, but they're not going to get over the top, then Mike Trout will either have to make a decision about what he wants to do with his future elsewhere, or he's going to ride it out because he likes being a loyal guy to the Angels, and in Orange County, you can understand why he's there and what he likes about it and his family likes about it and all that, of course, living in Newport and all that stuff. I mean, it's a fun area to be in. It's beautiful. I love the beaches down there and everything. It's always nice to, take a walk down there, and it's an amazing place. But how important is winning to Mike Trout, and how important is winning to him with the Angels? And he speaks about this every single year, and this year has been no different. When everybody was talking about trade rumors and asking Perry about it, and he said, Mike Trout's not getting traded, guys. I'm sorry to, bust up the news cycle here, but just because Shohei Ohtani left doesn't mean Mike Trout's going anywhere. It just doesn't. And, then Mike Trout came out in spring, months after Perry had said that, and said, hey, winning means a lot to me, but winning with the Angels means the most. That means more, because then I was with one team and I figured it out. And, certainly when you look at the legendary players in sports of all time, they figured out a way to get at least one, at some point, or at least go to the finals or be in that final conversation at least once or twice with the team. But, in modern day, most guys don't stay with the same team for their entire career. Mike Trout's already been an Angel for 12 or 13 years now. So I hope it happens for him. But it's a little bit different. But, people would ask me even last year, what do you think's happened with Ohtani? And I didn't know if the Angels would trade him at the deadline. I didn't think so, because all the indicators were that Artie Moreno didn't have the gumption to be the guy that did that. And I don't know that really helps your team, but it is his team, and he can make that decision if he wants to, whether we agree with it or not. But I thought Shohei was going to the Dodgers 2 years ago, because the only reason he didn't go to the Dodgers originally and came to the Angels is because there was no DH in the National League. That's the only reason. That's really it. Because he wanted to hit, and the Angels said, yeah, and the Angels also had history at that point with a couple guys where obviously never anywhere near Shohei's level, but they had some two-way players that they had some success trying them in multiple roles. And so they at least had some roadmap of what that could look like. And so they understood, what he was trying to do a little bit more than other teams that might be a little bit more gun shy to put that much on one player to be able to prepare for both of those things. Because it's a full-time job to do both. And when you're doing both, it's, that's your life. You're a starting pitcher and an ace, and you're the three hitter in the lineup every day. That's a lot. And so it takes a very special person to be able to do that. And Shohei is a very special person, and that's why he can do it. But ultimately, the Angels are going to have to figure out exactly what's going to happen moving forward. And that's going to take, hopefully, some surprises, whether it's guys they just brought in or guys they haven't brought in yet. If they do end up getting Martinez and or Snell, that would be great. That would help them. I think Snell would really help the other pitchers on the staff to see a guy that's been in the playoffs, that's pitched in the World Series, and how he goes about preparing every day. I think that would really help all these guys like Sandoval and Canning and Detmers to really learn from him. I think that would have a great effect. I don't know if it would be enough to put them over the top, but it would at least be something that would make them competitive and potentially compete for a wild card spot. If they don't do much of anything and they just kind of proceed with what they've got right now, as much as a fan as I want to pull for them, they're probably looking at a really good draft pick next year if they keep it just the way it is right now. I mean, that's just reality, just based on who's on the roster and who's not. I hope I'm wrong, but, Rendon, there's so many things that would have to happen for the Angels to compete this year with the roster they currently have. Like, Rendon would have to go back to being an all-star. One of these pitchers would have to step up and become an ace. The bullpen would have to keep it together and be used properly pretty much the whole year. and you're going to need a couple other guys to surprise you. Shanuel and Sano or somebody like that are going to have to step up and each hit 30 home runs. You know what I mean? Like, it's somebody's got to drive in runs other than Mike Trout, and somebody's got to get on base other than Mike Trout. And that's why Mike Trout ends up hitting 40 home runs and having 45 RBIs, is because that's not happening. Even when he had Shohei on his team, it wasn't happening enough, right? So what's going to happen? I don't know. They're going to have to be great in clutch situations, situational hitting, 2-out hitting, runners on base hitting. They're going to have to be one of the best in the league in all those categories. With the roster they have right now, they have no margin for error. So if they get a couple more guys, it'll increase the margin for error where they don't have to be quite as perfect, but we'll see. It's going to be an interesting year. I'm hopeful for it. I'm glad. The main thing I'm hopeful for is that I want to see Mike Trout come back and have a good, healthy year and show everybody that he's still that guy. Because the amount of disrespect when you get hurt is stupid, and he doesn't deserve that. Being a loyal guy and not wanting to be, the marketing face of baseball doesn't mean that you're not great. Just because he wants his focus to be what his focus is, and he doesn't want all these, auxiliary factors around him constantly all the time distracting from that, that's not a bad thing. And we're all very fortunate to have Mike Trout. We were very fortunate to have Shohei Ohtani. I'm grateful for the time we had Shohei Ohtani. I'm not mad at him for leaving because he didn't even have to move. He went down the street. That's what made it so easy. It's like if he goes to the Padres or the Dodgers, now they have a DH. Those are beautiful places to play. I mean, I lived in San Diego, long time. I've lived in Orange County, LA area for a lot of my life. I mean, there's a lot going for those places, and Dodgers as an organization are not going to stand around like Artie Moreno and hope for a day where they can win. They're going to proactively make it happen, no matter what anybody thinks about it, whether you agree or not with them signing Bauer or whoever, right? Like they're gonna figure out a way, and if it doesn't work out, they're going to cut that guy and then move on and figure out another way and go to Glass now. Granted, they have resources that maybe Artie Moreno doesn't have, but I don't really believe that. I think that Artie Moreno's got a lot of resources. I think he just wants to have a team that, is semi-competitive, and if they win, great. If they don't win, you're still my team, And I think the Dodgers are not in that mindset. The Dodgers go, no, we're the LA Dodgers, and we're going to win. And if we're not going to win doing this, then we're going to win doing that. And if that doesn't work, then we're going to try this, right? No matter what. And they have their head on a pivot toward winning all the time. And that's something that Artie Moreno either has to decide to do, or the team will never change, or get somebody that is interested in that. And the great thing is that there's a lot of people now in sports ownership groups that, put together really good groups that have a lot of financial wherewithal and can put things together quickly. So if he does decide that he wants to do that, and that winning's not his top priority as much as it is just owning the team and being an owner, in the context of being an owner, I hope at some point he makes a decision. And I'm sure if you talk to him, he'd go, well, we tried last year? What do you want from me? You had Shohei for 6 years. You've had Mike Trout for 13. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't just last year that you had an opportunity to do something. And last year, when you did do it, you can argue you really didn't even have the opportunity. You were just trying to make it seem like you were trying to do something. So us as Angels fans, Angels baseball addicts, still exists, Facebook, Twitter, whatnot. We have to hold him accountable as fans, whether he likes it or not. That's our job as fans. We have to say, hey, like, okay, that didn't work out and it didn't win last year. So what are you doing like the Dodgers where they pivot to this now or pivot to that? And if your answer is nothing because it costs too much, then you should sell the team. Just sell the team, because you're in an amazing market, in an amazing place, tucked in Orange County, that, you need to be proactive about more than just owning the team and the land deals. And that's all great and everything, Artie. I mean, come on. But there's more to baseball than that. I mean, baseball's about winning. And the Angels haven't won since you got the team. We won the year before you got the team, which is how you got it, right? Disney sold high and said, well, that's never going to happen again. And it was a magical season 2002. And it may never happen just that way again. But that doesn't mean that we can't win or try to win. And, there's going to be a year where it lines up for us. And if you don't put the right resources in the right place, then it won't matter. because they won't be able to do it. So you got to do that. You got to do that part. That's your part, or hire a G. If you don't want to do it, then hire a president or GM and actually empower them and stay out of the way. They don't need your permission for every trade to go, oh, yes or no. No, you're the guy I hired to do this, and you can do it. And you need to do that and stick to it if you're going to own the team. Because if you're not, and you're going to get involved in every little trade and whatever, that's not the way this works. You have baseball people for a reason. And I know you want to think of yourself as a baseball person, but that's not how this works, right? Like, you're competing against the best baseball people in the world on these other teams. You have to have some of those guys on your team. And I like Perry and everything, but if it's okay, if it's Perry, then let it be Perry. If it's not, then you need to bring somebody else in there other than Carpino or whoever it is. Like, somebody else needs to be making decisions around here, because the timing and the wherewithal and the return on investment and all those things are not there for the Angels. Maybe financially to some extent for Artie they are, but not on the field. And so, it was great to lock up Mike Trout. I know he took some swings and misses with Josh Hamilton, CJ Wilson, Anthony Rendon. And so he's a little gun shy about doing that more. And they thought when they got Rendon, oh, well, this guy's a winner. Like, he just won and he's got all the intangibles and he's so calm in the box and la, 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 la. The guy doesn't want to play baseball, dude. He just doesn't. I hope that changes, and I hope that I'm wrong, but it just doesn't seem like he really cares that much about playing baseball. So, he's got a bunch of money. He's already got a ring. Sometimes that's enough for people, and it seems like for Rendon, it may be. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he turns it around this year, and I hope he does some really good things. I hope they need him to. I mean, Mike Trout really wants him to. I can tell you that much right now, because without that, Mike Trout ain't going to be seeing any pitch that is something he can hit this year. And then he's going to start searching for it and getting frustrated. And then he's going to start swinging through pitches that are not in the zone, because he has no other choice but to try to make something happen, and it's just really hard to be in a position like that all the time. And Mike Trout's been in that position for a long time. I mean, even with Shohei there was really not a whole lot of other guys around him. So let's hope for the best in 2024. I'd like to be more positive, but it's just the reality of the situation. Plus, we needed to touch on all the stuff that happened that we hadn't talked about too. So, if you guys have thoughts, feedback, please leave a comment, send it over. I don't know if we're doing any more backstop shows. I haven't talked to Jim and Eric recently about that. It's been a minute since we've been able to do them for a lot of reasons, that a lot of different things have been going on, I think, with all three of us. So we just haven't been able to connect on something like that. Jim hadn't really been able to get in on them for the last while that we did them anyway, and me and Eric had been doing them for a while, and that's fine and everything. I like talking to Eric, and Eric's good, but it just never really we never really developed a consistency for it. And then there were some upload issues with, there were all kinds of different things going on about, where we would get an episode uploaded to, and then how we would move it over, and then we would need this access and that access. And Jim was a lot of that when we started the show, and how we were presenting it and uploading it and all of that. And then when he kind of stepped out, we didn't have the same channels set up to basically do everything the same way. And I tried to for a little while, but then it eventually kind of fell off, and then we just kind of stopped doing shows after that. So we'll see. The backstop might be back, and that's the show I did with Jim Capanis Jr., who's the author of Born into Baseball. If you haven't picked that up, you can get it on Amazon. It's great. It's a great, wonderful book about the Capanis family, from former Dodger GM Al to Jim Sr. to Jim Jr., who's Jim Capanis is the one that we have on the show. Everybody calls him Campy. And then obviously Eric Lindbergh's got a long history in baseball with being a reporter and an announcer and all kinds of stuff. So the Velvet Voice. So Doc's Mailbag, all that stuff too. So maybe we'll start something like that up again soon. I'm not sure yet, but I just want to hop on with you guys. I'm going to start doing stuff for not just the Angels, but for a lot of different things, and just start putting it out there, and trying to really grow the content of the channel and do all those kinds of different things like you're supposed to. And I just hadn't really had a chance to. I've had so much going on in my life, from moving from place to place and doing different things, that I just have not really had the extra, wherewithal, time and energy to put into it. So I'm trying to get better at that. So if you have any suggestions about things you want to see, things you want to talk about topic wise, just leave them in the comments. I'll find them eventually, and then we'll hop on it. Okay. All right, guys.